is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, there he is, Ira Winderman. I know you're a man of all sports. Were you watching Messi and the boys last night?
I did not. The whole Apple Plus thing has me a little perplexed as to what I'm going to do with that. I paid for enough packages as it is, so I pick them up and I drop them. But I saw the highlights. I saw what happened. And Big O, I would argue to you that the MLS is doing themselves a huge disservice with this Apple TV deal and the limited distribution. You are trying to build a following. You're trying to create the excitement. I don't know whether it was opening the package maybe for just the Messi games. We know that's why people are subscribing. But you want to draw people into the drama by letting them be part of the drama. And instead, I think they're sort of shutting them out. And I know sports are going in the direction of this a la carte and of this paywall, and you have to buy as you go. It's their prerogative. I think the MLS made a huge mistake.
No, I disagree with you
Okay.
because they don't have the NBA and NFL and Major League Baseball's TV packages. And because of that, just like hockey, that they have to raise ticket prices in order to generate revenue, the soccer has to do the same thing that they do. And in other words, they had to come up with this Apple package because they knew they were getting Messi. And so how in the hell are they going to pay for that? And so these owners are not going to have that. So they have to get creative behind Adidas, behind Apple, behind all these sponsors in order to pay for these stars. And so what's the other way that you offset it? You offset it by pay-per-view. And so you put in Apple, and all of a sudden everybody can get Apple. And remember, Apple's worldwide. So they're also gaining subscribers outside of the country at the same time. And so it's a league that struggles for revenue. And you're now bringing in the biggest star that's bigger than anybody in the U.S. So how in the hell are you going to pay for a guy that costs more than LeBron, more than Mike Trout and Ohtani combined? And so then, it just gets to just a ridiculous thing, and you've got to do something about it. And this is the way you got to get creative when you're in the NHL and Major League Soccer.
I would find it hard to believe that if ESPN knew this kind of fanaticism was there, the network that at this time of year is giving us cornhole, the slippery stairs. We were watching pillow fighting on Friday night on the Ocho, that they could create this kind of interest.
But Ira, look what's going on, my brother. Disney said, ESPN, you're off, bro. We're done with you. We're not carrying your ass anymore. ABC, we're done with you. We're not carrying your ass anymore. Why? Because traditional media is not being followed the way it used to be. Traditional radio, traditional television, and we're not going to lose our ass off. So ESPN now is on its own island. It has to pay for itself, all the rights fees, all the hosts, everything. This is why you're seeing them make so many cuts now. They don't have that kind of money anymore, Ira, to go do these kind of things. So ESPN is going to be limited now compared to the ESPN that, we kind of grew up with.
I get ESPN Plus, and I have the package also, and there's so much on there that it makes it worthwhile versus one or two things. Right. Look, let's be honest, Big O also. Messi is a phenomenon. InterMiami has become a phenomenon. Yep. But be honest with me, Big O. If any other two MLS teams were playing, if NYFC was playing Dallas, you wouldn't be watching. You're not watching the Apple package for anything but this. I just think there's
hey, Ted Lasso, watch your mouth.
Okay. All right. And I think we've moved on from there. So again, every package can have its hot commodity. I just, did my Hulu 1 month free so I could watch The Bear and catch both seasons. Then you cancel and you move on. I just think if a league wants to endure, one, you've got to move as many games as possible to Hard Rock. You have to, because there is a demand out there. It would be bigger in the community. It would be better for local endorsements. You have to do that, number one.
And you can actually have a section of cheap tickets.
I'm just saying, is you can fill the whole place. I understand with UM and the Dolphins and wanting to keep the field, that's an issue.
Yeah.
There is a Fox element to the MLS deal. And I think Fox Network, not even FS1, should jump in and put some of these games on nationally, the Messi games. I think the exposure would help the league also. I think Fox would pony up a little more for that. Fox money might be able to do it.
The thing is Apple going to give that up now? Because you know what I'm saying?
Oh, no. I think the horses, the barn door is open and they're out, and I get all that, but it's just a shame because this is something so special for our country. Look, I'm older. I go back to the Cosmos and when Pele got here and how much that meant to at least give that boost to the North American Soccer League. You remember that?
I went to Lockhart a couple times as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, just remember that with the national exposure help there. I just think this is a shame because this is fantastic stuff going on, and you're seeing a true maestro, project his game. Granted, it's the 16th best league in the world, but still, what he's doing is still phenomenal just off of what comes off of his boot.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch, and I wonder if Major League Baseball goes, we screwed up. We should have let those brothers buy the baseball team because our sport is going to die there in South Florida because we don't have an owner to keep up with those owners right there because they're going to take all the headlines in the summer from here on out.
And especially when they move to Miami, and think how close they'll be. Think how close the exit to the airport is to Lone Depot Park right now. You're like across the street. So, it's not almost like you get to that on 17th Avenue, you get to that Walgreens. Do you go left to the Marlins game or do you go right to the InterMiami game? You're going to go to the InterMiami game because it's a happening. So, yeah, I think as tough as it is now for the Marlins and their 6:30 starts and trying to get people to watch by starting earlier, I think it only gets tougher for them.
And by the way, Moss Brothers, put a roof on it, bitch. Put a roof on it. The Marlins learned their lesson. You have your sport in our rainy season.
Correct.
Get smart, dude. Put a roof on that bitch. Plus, you're right next to the airport. Put a roof on that thing.
I mean, and it's interesting because the U.S. Open is about to start in tennis, and they actually get LaGuardia to move the flight pattern when they have the tournament. I do wonder when Messi plays his games and it's an international event, will they move the planes around there? It's a much bigger airport. It's an international airport. So I'm curious about that. But yeah, the shame is the Messi introduction was rained out and delayed. 2 of his games have been rain delayed also. It's just that time of year. And Big O, you know this because you and me are old school. You remember when they played a pro player, when the Marlins played, every game was delayed. There was no such thing as a non-delayed game there. Yeah.
Well, I worked the first couple of years with InterMiami, and we had a shit ton of delays. Sean and I laugh about it. Every time there's a rain delay, there's a text between me and him like, God, thank God we're not there. It's like, oh my God, what a blessing that I'm not doing this anymore because it was a pain in the ass.
And we see Canes games delayed by weather. We see FIU games delayed by weather. Like you got to understand your market and where you live. So that will be interesting.
Cole Swider. Tell me about Cole Swider.
Well, here's what's interesting. He's a very, very good three-point shooter. 2 years ago, the Miami Heat were the everything in three-point shooting in the NBA. And now we've seen that drop off. They had this blip during the playoffs, which is great. But you've already lost Gabe Vincent. You've already lost Max Strus. There is a possibility, a reasonable chance, you're going to lose Duncan Robinson in the Damian Lillard trade. So what you're seeing the Heat do right now is they're going to have to reload on three-point shooters. This team that had everyone who was a three-point shooter, look, Dame Lillard's going to get in the lane. He's going to pass. He's still a point guard. Who's he going to throw the three-pointer assist to? It's not going to be to Bam. It's not going to be to Jimmy Butler. So, and if Tyler Hero was dealt, that's another three-point shooter you're losing. So I think the Heat are covering themselves there. This is a subtle hint, a subtle tell when they made this decision to bring him in on this Exhibit 10 contract that the Heat are saying, okay, we know what the team looks like now, but what are we going to do in a post-Damian Lillard trade? Right. They're thinking that way anyway. It's interesting. The Heat, and you mentioned it, as far as being the touchstone team of how to operate, are thinking what happens if Dame, what happens if no Dame. Yeah. Portland is just wallowing out there. Like you wonder why one team is good and has forethought and the other team doesn't. And this idiocy of let's bring Damian Lillard back if we have to into camp and have him play with these young kids. No, you've seen teams when you make that change, you got to go with your young kids. When you want to set Tua free, you let Ryan Fitzpatrick go, even though he did a great job. Because at some point, it has to be about the kids and their growth and not looking over your shoulder, Scoot Henderson, and saying, hey, Dame has not played a single NBA game off the bench. I don't want to start my career off the bench. Portland's you got to move. Moves are hard. There were hard decisions in every sport. There were hard decisions for the Heat to trade Eddie Jones. There were hard decisions to trade Caron Butler. But at some point, you have to say, hey, we love you, but we have to move on. Portland's indecisiveness right now is just getting in the way of everything. Bad team, losing record, no playoffs, team that thinks ahead and has forethought, Miami Heat. Even when Andy and Pat are on vacation, they're still adding players, tweaking the roster. And
Well,
one of the most.
look at
I'm
this
sorry.
weekend. Zach Thomas goes into the Hall of Fame, right? Well, Jimmy Johnson comes to Miami and he brings Jack Del Rio with him. He drafts Zach and he's, well, I'll groom this kid. It'll be a special team or whatever. First week, he says, holy shit, this kid's for real. He turns to Jack with respect and says, Jack, dude, I made a mistake. I got to let you go now so you can try to find a job. But
Sure.
this is my starter. And he made the change, right away. Now, on the Portland side, I think Joe obviously doesn't have a lot of experience with all of this. But to me, the worst part about all of this for him is that he's allowing all this crap to fester on his end. And it just creates just a whole bunch of uncomfortable situations for the fans, for the people in the front office, for Dame, for the players, for Scoot, who's taken over for Dame. So none of this is because Scoot's like going, is he coming or is he not? Is he going to show up? Am I going to be uncomfortable? Am I, and so you're creating all this hell and you just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Now on the flip side, so it's kind of a two-part question.
Sure.
And I think that the Heat are kind of doing that now. They're planning ahead for this trade. So that when I saw the Cole thing, I was like, okay, another three-point shooter. Okay, they know what they're going to lose. It's kind of like watching Chris Greer go, okay, Jalen got injured. Let me go get Eli Apple. Let me go get this other DB because I had a shitload of injuries last year. I don't want this to happen to me again. Let me be prepared just in case it happens again. So I kind of see both sides of it. But it looks like one has an uncomfortable situation, and then the Heat is kind of in a stalemate that they've got to prepare for what could happen, but they can't over-prepare because they can't commit to certain deals because if it doesn't happen, then that creates their own problems.
Yeah, and exactly. And again, you feel for the guys like the Tylers and the Duncans and the Kyle that are spinning in the wind. Spoke to Bam Adebayo at his camp at Slam Miami High School over the weekend. And even he was honest. He goes, I'm not a GM. I have no idea what the hell is going on. I don't know what my team is going to be. You want stability. It doesn't have to be in August, but it needs to be in September when guys filter back into the gym when they get there. I'm going to be honest with you, Big O. If you're asking me where would I rather be on media day on October 2nd, if there's no deal with Lillard, I'd rather be in Portland because I'd love to hear what he has to say. Because that'll be the first time. I know all the Heat players. Everyone will be back. Whether Tyler's there, that'll be interesting to ask him questions. But it's still Jimmy's team. It's still Bam's team. We know the core of the team. But how is Dame going to react with that? He has been very good about saying nothing, about cutting his rap album, about staying out of the way. He's a professional. He understands it. All the Heat players we talked to, Josh Richardson said last week, hey, I want to know what's going on. It's going to affect my position. Am I a starter? Am I a reserve? What's going to happen? But I have to let it play out. Bam Adebayo said the same thing. Udonis Haslem was talking about the young players there, even though he's retired, the same thing. So you don't want players twisting in the wind. Tyler Hero went home. He threw the first pitch out in Milwaukee. No Heat logo there. He went with the name Boy Wonder on his jersey. Kyle Lowry went to U.S. Olympic camp or World Cup camp with Steve Kerr. He was there with Chris Paul talking about it, working around it. You'd like to see them move forward. You know the framework. I wrote in the Sun Sentinel this weekend. I broke down every other team in the NBA. There's not a lot of other teams bidding against you. Joe Cronin needs to get to work, needs to get it done, needs to put this in his rearview mirror so he can become what he wants. And then, of course, the Heat can become what they want as well.
Wade having his moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wrote the first of several stories I'm doing this week, and I talked to a bunch of different players about the different chapter of his career. So I spoke to Gary Payton when he said, hey, when Dwayne took over in 2006, he made a statement. Then I talked to Mario Chalmers, and he said, and this is fascinating, Big O. As a matter of fact, I'll let you think the rest of your show about this. Dwayne Wade, a player in the prime of his career, decided to defer. He deferred to LeBron. He made sure Chris Bosh got his stuff. Dwayne Wade could have been a leading scorer, sort of James Harden-esque in his career, but decided not to. Is there another Hall of Famer at the absolute peak of his career who stepped back behind someone? Now, the big three was unique, obviously with LeBron and Chris Bosh. But it's not like Scottie Pippen stepped back. Scottie Pippen was always behind Michael Jordan. Right. LeBron never stepped back. He just wasn't.
Kareem was older, so he had to take a back step because it kind of became Magic's team, and he took a back step. That's like the closest I can come up with.
And some people might even point to when Wilt went to the Lakers and he agreed to become more facilitator. Bob McAdoo went to the Lakers.
Yeah, but that was
sixth man.
But I think, to Wilt's credit on that, that was his coach that really reached him and said, you know, Wilt, this is how we're going to win. And so to Wilt's credit, he understood that this is the higher IQ way of playing things. And again, you also have to have the ability. God, Wilt, bro, Jesus Christ, he had the ability to do whatever the hell he wanted. He had the vision to pass the ball. So to his credit, he did something to make the team better, whereas Kareem actually did what you were talking about. He literally took a step back and
said, he was sort of on the downside or had peaked.
Right, exactly. That's why it's a little different. Yeah.
Dwayne Wade was a rising star in 2010. He was it. He would have been the #1 player on 26 other NBA teams. And yet, during that second training camp with LeBron, where he went to the Bahamas, he told Spo, I'm going to play off the ball. I'm going to learn how to cut without the ball. I'm going to become that Reggie Miller type of player. I'm going to let LeBron be the man. They won 2 consecutive championships. That really is unprecedented and what makes him unique. And I don't know if you saw this or Sean saw this over the weekend, the drivel from Jeff Teague, when he was talking about legacies. And he said, James Harden's the better player because people aren't trying to emulate Dwayne Wade. They're trying to do the step back 3 in James Harden. Like, what a bunch of BS. Winning still matters. And to be effective and to win at the same time means everything. There is one player who in Game 3 against Dallas, down 13 points in the fourth quarter, said, I ain't going out this way, and won. There's another player in James Harden who was wilted in every single playoff appearance dating back to when the Heat played the Thunder in the NBA Finals in 2012. So these kind of comparisons, whether it's Paul Pierce, doing his talk recently about being better than Dwayne, what Dwayne did is what we all want people to do. We want people to put out their best product and to be a team player. Dwayne Wade as ultimate teammate. We talk about UD all these years about that. But Dwayne really was that during the Big 3 era. And I think that goes unnoticed. Every one of Dwayne Wade's career numbers, from points to rebounds to assists to everything, could have been higher and would have been higher if he wanted. But he chose to win instead.
Yeah, man. Magic probably could have scored more points, but he knew facilitating would make everybody better. Bird could have scored more points if he wanted to, but he was a fantastic passer. And that entire team had that entire, attitude about each other, that they had to set each other up in order to be the best that they could be. And to me, that's part of this game that you got to figure out. We've seen, when Michael was greedy, he would get his ass kicked all the time. All the time. And that's because he had Orlando Woolridge and Rory Sparrow, and he didn't have the kind of then when he finally got a coach and then got some players like Holmgren and Pippen and Cartwright and then started to get shooters around him, then he became more of a facilitator and he got guys involved. And that's why Paxson and Kerr and Hodges shot big shots in big moments because Michael set them up. You know what I mean? So it's part of the game that some guys figure it out. And then we see the Carmelos and we see the Allen Iversons of the world that when you go that selfish route that you think you could just score, that's not going to get you anywhere, dude. Those guys never win like that.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm not going to talk to you between now and the inductions on the weekend. So the 2 biggest names going in are Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki. And I've argued this back and forth with people. I think Dwayne has a bigger NBA legacy as a player. I think, and I get the impression the NBA is going to treat Dirk as the star of the weekend because they love the international element. And he was one of the great initial international stars after Sabonis. And I get it. But Big O, am I wrong? And I spoke to some people at BAM's event over the weekend. I think Dwayne had a much better career than Dirk Nowitzki.
Hell yeah.
I think he's a much more of an all-time list player in the top 10 or 15 or 25 than Dirk Nowitzki. And yet I think if you watch this weekend, it's almost like it's an homage to Dirk more than Dwayne. And I think that's unfair to Dwayne.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that one. I would say Dwayne had the better career. I know that this whole international thing, because that's the reason why the NBA is growing.
Right.
Let's also be honest, okay? It's not just our homegrown talent. We have a lot of international players now in this league, and this league will get to expand to Vegas and Seattle soon, Why? Because we have a lot of international players. So the pool is a lot bigger. So I understand the method behind the madness of giving love to the international players, so the international community sees it, and then other players around the world are going to say, hey, that's the place I want to go to. They embrace everybody. So I get, and the NBA is all about inclusion, by the way. That's what they're all about. So I understand all of that, but I cannot argue that Dwayne Wade was.
And I think that's going to be a hard part of this week, is that people are going to try to go otherwise, and I just don't see that. The star of this year's class.
So being selfless, so you get punished for being selfless.
Yes. The stars of this year's class, from a player perspective, are Dwayne Wade, and of course, from a coach perspective, is Greg Popovich. To me, those are the two headliners. But you know what? They're trying to create theater also. I get that.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, what do you got going on in the Sun Sentinel so folks can check you out?
Full week of Dwayne Wade coverage. Going to get Pat Riley's thoughts. Going to write about how Dwayne, being so selfless, look over his career. He has his press conference on Friday covering that, his induction on Saturday. It's sort of Dwayne week. And let's be honest, I still have the Miami Heat have acquired Damian Lillard story in my computer right here. I already have the paragraph written, the Heat have acquired Damian Lillard for XX, XXX, and XXX. So hopefully my editors put in the right names there in case I happen to be not reachable. So it's going to be monitoring Dame the whole time, but I think this is Dwayne Wade's week. He deserves a week like this. I like how it's staggered. It wasn't the same week as Zach Thomas. We got to celebrate Zach last week. We get to celebrate Dwayne this week. Then we get into football and everything starts up for real. So bunch of Dwayne Wade coverage coming up in your Sun Sentinel and at your doorstep.
Subscribe, folks, like I do, and make sure you follow him on Twitter at Ira Heatbeat. Ira, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Catch you in our next Acura Pembroke Pines report. Thanks, Big O.
Thank you, sir. There you go, Ira Winderman. And don't forget, when it comes to Acura Pembroke Pines, the #1 volume sales dealership in the United States. For many years, I said Southeast United States. They are now #1 in the United States. So the Summer of Performance event is going on right now. They've got 3.9% financing. Check it out. You can get up to 3.9% financing. So check it out at 15601 Pines Boulevard, just off of I-75. And Pines, the finest dealership in the business. It is Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.